Hello. Hi, Samanika. Are you in? Hello. Hello.
Hi, Travis.
Hi, Samanika. Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I was not around.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. Yeah. I just shared you a link. So that is the YouTube video. So now it's live. So you can like put that on the Facebook group or, on the WhatsApp group. So anyone can watch it as well, just from YouTube.
Where?
I think I put it on the chat on your, let me just go out. I put a message. Let me see the
On
message didn't go.
WhatsApp?
Yeah, on WhatsApp.
Let me.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that you can like later share. So I'll just
Saying that it's going live, no?
yeah, it's live, so you can put it on the Facebook group or the WhatsApp group, so anyone can just watch it as well. Yeah, if they don't want to join the meeting. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, 42. Yeah. I'll just pass the hosting to you as well. Maybe I'll first start the recording.
Wait, now I can hear what I said like a few minutes ago.
Yeah, the YouTube is there'll be a lag in the YouTube one because this is a live one, so that will take time. YouTube will
Okay.
happen with a lag. Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. Now, how do I?
So I'll now make you the host. So then just let people in. Uh, yeah, you should now be the host. Let's see. Yeah, something. Can you see? Are you the host now? Can you see the management?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, there are some people waiting.
Yeah, so you can let them in. I'll just start the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, you can admit them, and I think after that you can change the settings so that you can let everyone in.
Okay. Now I'll let them in, huh?
Yeah, let them in. Hi, everyone. This is Travis, and thanks for joining this, and thanks for being on time as well. So I think we'll wait about 2 minutes just in case people have to set up. If this is your first time on Zoom, there's like a small setup period while the software downloads. But yeah, in the meantime, just check to make sure that your mics, you can hear me clearly and you can see the screen. Just let me know if there's any issue. So during the presentation, if you want, if there's like a lot of background noise where you are, you can mute your mic, so then it won't disturb others. But if you have any question, just be free to unmute and just ask any questions. Also, there's like a chat feature in this as well. So you can use that as well if you have any questions. Yeah, so I guess we can get started. So once again, thanks everyone for joining this session. So this is basically we are organizing this as part of the Candidate Council, so what we've been doing so far is now given that the situation, we basically had to postpone basically all the in-person events that we were having. So instead, we started to move to webinars. So we had in the last 2 weeks, we had two on derivative sessions. So there was one where we were going through the options material, and another one where we were going through past paper related questions on that. And it was like well received. And some of the feedback we got from the candidates was also quite positive. So actually going forward, what we've been thinking is to have more of these, particularly when it comes to like exam related material. A lot of that material can be reused. And, instead of us doing the same events over and over again every year, we can, do them in the form of webinars. Because a big advantage of that is like today's session also, we can record the session. So because of that, we can have a good recording of it. And then, so then every year we can like start introducing, doing new topics, covering more ground. So we felt that's like a good value add to the candidate. So that's why we started doing webinars. So what we want to do in today's session is to sort of give you an overview in terms of how we sort of do these online webinars using a tool like Zoom. And how we can actually, because what we see is that, initially a lot of people are very hesitant when it comes to like an online platform. They think that, how can it be as effective as an in-person one? So yeah, there are some events, it's more difficult to translate to an online version. For example, maybe something like we have like a calculator masterclass. So that might be a bit more difficult to do as an online one. But some of these things like even like today's event, I mean, it works perfectly well as a webinar. So what we want to sort of highlight is what are some of the ways to just make sure that you're doing it in an effective way so that the people are engaged and they see the value add in this. So initially, I'll be going over some of the features in Zoom and how you can use those to conduct these online webinars. Then just some best practices and things that we come across when doing this. And I'm assuming that most of you probably now are given like work and things like that. Probably a lot of your meetings are also now being conducted through Zoom or these kind of platforms. So any insights you have, also please be free to, we can have a discussion at the end. Okay. So yeah, so this is what we'll be going over. So initially I go over the features. So before we get started with that, just to give some motivation, so last week, actually given that the June exam has been postponed, we put like a survey to the candidates to get their views on what they think of these webinars, conducting more of these things in the form of webinars, as well as some of the events we had planned, whether to postpone them. And this was some of the feedback that we got from that survey we sent to the candidates. So actually, looking at it, it's quite encouraging that a lot of people they've started to see that the webinar format. I think a lot of people are now on board with the webinar format. So it's quite positive to see that many people said that they prefer webinars. And when it comes to actually, when we said that, a lot of these webinars, probably we can like give it at a lower cost. as well as the fact that we can now give you a recording of the event. I think that's a very big value add to the candidates. So because that, a lot of majority seem to say that they prefer webinars. So I think that's a very positive thing, and sort of shows that this sort of format is something that the candidates and charter holders would value. So even for other types of events, this is a very much a feasible alternative. Okay? So overall, what I feel is that these are the two things that it boils down to in terms of what makes a presentation successful or not. One is that essentially the preparation of the presenter. So I mean, when it's like an in-person session, the thing is when you see like, okay, the presenter, maybe it's like he's taking some time to set up the presentation. He might be referring to his notes and things like that. There might be some delays that are happening when you're doing something in person. The thing is, because you see that in front of you what's happening, you can forgive them, you have an idea what's going on. But when it comes to doing something online, the person on the other side doesn't know what's happening. If there's just quiet, there's like it seems like nothing's happening, it's very easy that they will turn off. So because of that, I think more than an in-person event, when you're approaching an online webinar, you need to be very much the level of preparation, I feel, is more. You need to be like be ready to go, be on time, have your presentation loaded up and ready to go, know exactly what you're going to do, because I think that is very important to make sure that you can keep the viewers engaged with that. The other thing which we can't really do much about is both affects the presenter as well as the people who are viewing it, is stable internet connection. So I think that's something you can't do much about, but I will talk about some things you can kind of do to mitigate that issue. But that's like sort of like an external issue that's going to affect everything. So yeah, so this is the sort of issue that you have when it comes to online. People are, it's a bit hard to like keep people in control, to make sure that you're not sure whether they're listening to you intently or things like that. And given internet issues as well, from the people who are listening into it, most probably you won't be able to see them as well, if their videos are not switched on. So because of that, you have no idea whether they are listening to you or not. So because of that, you need to make sure that what you're delivering, that you're doing it properly, and you know how to use the tools effectively to make sure that this doesn't happen. And yeah, so this is really it. So so you, from the presenter's point of view, this is what you can do. Make sure that that you give to the audience that it seems that you know what you're doing, and that there's no delays on your part. So this is something I think that's very important. So a big part of that is understanding how to use the webinar softwares properly, what are the different features of it, and how to quickly navigate between them. So I think that's the key thing that would determine this. So with that, we'll go into the main thing, which is to go over some of the tools in Zoom. So probably some of you all might already be familiar with it, but I'll just go over some of the key tools that you would be using when it comes to doing this sort of thing in a webinar sort of setting. So these are some of the features I'll be going over. So what I will do at this point is I will stop my screen sharing and I'll just sort of like highlight. So everyone, if you can just go to the Zoom platform, I can then show you sort of where these features are. And then later I'll talk through some of the things to keep in mind when doing that. Okay. So yeah, so if everyone can just go to their Zoom. So I've stopped my screen sharing. So if you go to your Zoom platform, so I'm assuming most of you are looking at this from the laptop. If you're looking from the phone, the interface might be slightly different. Okay, but broadly, if you go to that, I think what you should be seeing is that in the middle you'll have basically the speaker, so you can switch between that. On the top right hand, there should be an option to switch between the gallery view and the viewer. So if you want to see all of the participants, if it's something like a discussion, you have multiple people, if it's like a panel discussion type of event, then might be feasible to have like that gallery view, and you can then see all the participants at once. So there's that option. Then if you start from the bottom left, what you have there is the audio and the video option. So over there next to the audio option, so you can see that if there's a slash across it, that means that either your mic is muted or your video is muted. So you can toggle between that. So if there's a lot of background noise, it's best to like advise the participants to like mute their mics. Okay, so it won't affect the delivery. And if you click the arrow that is there next to the mute symbol, that will give you the option to, you can change the selection for your microphone or the speaker. So always it's best in these kind of situations to use a headphones when it comes to the speaker. So the participants to like mute their mics. Okay, so it won't affect the. Sorry, I think someone's mic might not be muted. Yeah, please mute it in the background. I think I was getting some noise from there. Sorry, just getting back to this. So from here you can change the microphone, the speaker output. So it's best to use some headphones if you can, or if you don't have, the other alternative is to sign in from your phone, because typically the phone audio might be better. So maybe say you're doing a presentation and there's some slides involved. So maybe what you can do is from the laptop, you can sign into Zoom and just see the slides that are being presented, while you can separately log in from your phone using the Zoom app on the phone, and then you can listen to it from that. So that might be a viable option if you don't have good headsets, or your speaker or your microphone is not working. So that's something. So here you're able to change those settings. Same thing with the video as well. So typically, because of the internet connectivity issues, best is, apart from the speaker, not to have the videos on for the participants. But if you want, you can turn it on if it's fine. There's also this option to where you can change your background and things like that. But those will eat up your bandwidth, so best not to go for those kind of things. Then in the middle, what you should see is that you will see in the middle of the bottom of the panel, you should be seeing the participants. So you can see all the participants who are in this. So the person who is hosting the meeting will be able to manage them in terms of like muting their mic, unmuting them, removing someone from it. So those are all there. So if you click that participants button, you'll be able to see the list of all the participants. Then in the middle, we have the share screening option. So typically in a presentation, that's something you would be wanting to do. So if you press the share screen button, what you will see is that you will get a couple of options. So if everyone can just click on it, I think you'll be able to see there are a couple of options there. So the first one is you can share your screen itself. So your entire computer screen can then be seen, or you can go for a whiteboard. So this software is quite ideal for someone who's doing like tutoring and things like that as well, because you have this whiteboard feature. Apart from that, what you can also do is, so instead of sharing your entire screen so that everyone will be able to see the full screen, you can just only share the selected presentation. So if you have your presentation loaded up, you can just directly share that instead of just sharing the screen. So what you have to do is, if you have a present like a PDF or a PowerPoint loaded up, you will see those options as well. Whatever applications that are open, you'll be able to just share that. So that's also a very useful feature that you can use if you don't want to share your entire screen. But of course, then be mindful that if you are changing your application, you need to also then change the sharing the screen, because if not, say you have just shared the screen of a PDF and now you want to go to show your audience some website, they won't be able to see it unless. So then in those situations, you have to go back and share the particular website or the browser that you have opened up. If you share your entire screen, then they'll be able to see whatever you're doing at that point. Okay, so those are the options you have when it comes to share screening. Another useful thing is, if you look at the bottom of that share screening options, there's something that says share computer sound and optimize the screen sharing for video clip. So what that means is that if you say want to play a video and you want the audience to also to see and hear it, you need to click those options, because if not, what would happen is, if with regular screen sharing, if you play a video, they will not be able to hear the video. because the computer sound won't be coming through them. So if you want to share like a video or something, make sure you click those options and then do that. Okay. One thing I've also found, it's not very consistent in terms of whether that's a general problem or not. Sometimes what can happen is that when you're sharing the video, there might be feedback that is coming from your mic. If your mic is on as well. So because of that, it might be good to switch off the mic while you're playing a video. Okay, so that's a tip on that. Then next to the share screening option, so now you can exit the share screening option. Right next to the share screening option in your bottom panel is the chat option. So there you can see what you can do there is you can see the messages that have been put in here. Okay, and if there's any messages that are publicly viewed, you'll be able to see this. So anyone can type on this and you can see a message that is there. So if I were to put a message to everyone, just say everyone, yeah, everyone should be able to see a message that it should like pop up there. Okay. So you can also like change it and send a private message to someone. So if you have like maybe some technical difficulty or something like that, maybe you can send a message to the host and they can help you out with that. Okay. So this chat is quite useful for that. Another useful thing is you can even use it to share files and things like that. There should be an option where you can share links, and it should be possible to also share files with them. So this is quite useful. So when it comes to like Q&A type of things, this is a very useful feature to use in this. Okay, so that's the chat option. Then yeah, if we exit that, then next to it, you also have the record option. So right now this session is being recorded. So you should be seeing on the top, there should be like a small blinking red light, which shows that the session is being recording. Also, you can see like a live button. So that's because we're also like streaming this live to YouTube as well, to our YouTube channel. So you can even view it from there. Probably the live stream, there might be a delay in terms of that, but yeah, but this session is being recorded as well, so you can toggle in and off that recording. You can also so if you're recording, typically it's only the host or the person who started the recording who will be able to do that, but someone else can also record, but then they would need the permission of the host to do that. And also from this, when you're setting up the meeting, if for like security reasons or for privacy reasons, you can also prevent anyone else from recording using the Zoom software. Okay? So those are some of the control options you have with that. Next to that, there's like a small reaction button as well. Okay. Yeah, so I think those are the main things I can show you with this. Another thing to also show you, I think you should be seeing my, I hope everyone can see my screen again. So I think another thing to talk about is these annotation tools. So while the screen sharing is on, if you go to the top of the screen, there will be an option called, click on that. It will, there'll basically be a bar that shows up where you can use it to draw things. So for instance, in this case, if I was to draw lines, you know, you can basically draw on the screen, or you can erase, you can change the color, you can do anything using this. Okay, and also by default, you can see someone else is illustrating as well. So you can allow this. So this is very useful, like if you're doing sort of like a like an online, like a lecture, or like to your questions, they can use this. So ideally, you can do this with the whiteboard feature, but in anything, even on a presentation like this, you can use this to draw on the screen. So you can do all of these, add notation, add symbols, everything. Once you're done, you can use the eraser to erase them manually if you want, or you can just use, there's an option called clear. You can clear all the drawings. Because that's something important to remember, to clear it, because say if you're changing slides, say for a moment, if I were to draw something, and let's say change my slide, say to this, the drawing would still remain. Okay, so because of that, it's important to remember to clear the drawing. So there's a waste paper basket symbol. If you just say clear all the drawings, it will erase the drawing from the board. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, with regard to this Annotate tool, so if you're using something like PowerPoint and you're in the slide show view, the presentation view, and you want to do annotations, you know that in PowerPoint itself, there are annotation tools. So like if you right click on it, you have those the pointer options and the pen options and things like that are there. So like in this case, I've now switched to that. But what we find is that using the Annotate tool that is in Zoom, when you're in this screen sharing situation, it's better to use the Zoom tool. Because if you use the PowerPoint one, what we found is that there's a bit of a lag between what you draw and the voice. So because of that, if there's a situation where you need to annotate something, it's best to use the Zoom annotation features for that. Okay. Also, in terms of the controls you have for that, it's possible to you can restrict people from annotating their adding their annotations as well. So that's another control that you have. Yeah, so those are like the main things. So just to go into a bit more detail, just to discuss a few things. So these are the things that I was showing you. So make sure you are able to do these kind of things. Typically when you log into, when you start a Zoom call, they will ask whether to join with computer audio or the phone audio. So always select the computer audio option because the phone audio is basically if you're someone who wants to call in from the phone. But use the computer audio because that's something that sometimes confuses people. When you say join with the computer audio, you know, they might thinking that, okay, I'm using headphones, not the computer's audio. But what it means is that you're using basically the system that is connected to your laptop or the phone, and not you're not dialing in externally like a regular conference call that you would do. Okay, then yeah, make sure you test them, and you know, as I said, recommend the headphones. With the chat feature, I think we've already gone over this. Nothing much to discuss there. I think one additional thing is, say if you're doing like a Q&A type of event, so you can take questions on this, or you might want to go for another option like this, like the platform called Slido. So it's Slido, you're able to like enter those questions and then it'll nicely display it, or it'll be like in a browser format. So that might be, so if you're doing like a Q&A, instead of just taking through the chat option, that would be another useful way to kind of do a Q&A type of event, because then what you can do is, since Slido is a web-based platform, what you can do is you can share your screen for that web, and then everyone can see the list of questions that people have, and then you can take those questions. So if you're doing like mainly a Q&A type of event, Slido is a good option to go for that. Okay. Then this is what I was showing with the screen sharing. So hope everyone was clear on that. Let me know if anyone has any questions during this. So you can see that, so this is what I was talking about, the share screen option. If you just click on those, you can share. If you're having a video to share, you can use that option. And this is the annotations I was showing you. So it should drop down as a bar from the top. So these are the different options that you have. So to clear it, as I was saying, you need to click on this option to clear the drawings that you have. And also make sure sometimes, because what will happen is when you go to the Annotate tool, it might, if you're doing like a presentation, you may no longer, because you selected the Annotate tool is now what is on top. So because of that, you might not be able to navigate the slides from there, because the Annotate tool is now on. Say if you want to go to another slide. So because of that, remember what you need to do is there's the X, you basically need to just close that, close the Annotate tool, clicking on the X. Okay, and then if you click back to your presentation, you then should be able to navigate the slides. Okay, and that's the case here. So just at the end on the right hand side, you should be seeing the X. If you just click on that, it'll switch off the Annotate tool. Okay, and as I said, you can restrict the annotations for other people if you want. Okay, these are the recordings. So once the recording starts, the person who started the recording will have some control over that in terms of they can pause and stop the recording, as well as you can allow others to record. If you have like the Zoom Pro system, So in terms of the Zoom, I think currently the package that you would have is, if you're accessing it from a free system, I think there's a limit to about like 3 participants. If you have, I think, more than 3 or 4 participants, then a call would be limited to 40 minutes. So if you want to go for longer, then you'd have to start a new meeting, and the recording would also be limited to that. But if you have a pro package, as in this case, then you can, I think, accommodate up to like 100 people, and you have like unlimited recording. So if you have the pro package also, then what you can also do is you can either record it locally. So that is when you end the meeting, it will basically start compiling the video, and it will save on your laptop, or you can also record it in the cloud. Then when you access the Zoom software through your login on the web browser, you'll be able to view the cloud application of that as well. So the cloud is also useful if you want to share the video with someone without having to like first upload to something else. You can just share the link to the cloud as well. Okay? And as we're doing now, it also, Zoom also allows you to stream it on Facebook and YouTube. You just need to allow some advanced in your settings. You just need to allow for that. So I think later on after this session, I will share like a full process doc, so like a user manual for Zoom, which you can refer all of these things, which has more resources where you can find out more information about it as well. Okay. Then another thing that's useful is this managing participants. So the host would be able to see all of the participants, and if they want, you can mute their mics, mute their videos. They have, those are the controls that they have. It's also possible to change the host. So for example, in this case, I started the meeting and then I passed it on to Sadhunika to manage it. Because typically when you're doing a kind of a webinar like this, it's always best to separate the person who's doing the presentation and the hosting duty, because then the host can check the participants who are coming in, and can do and handle that if they have if they're having some technical issues and things like that. The host can sort of manage that. So that's I think one of the tips I would have is that it's always best to have the host be a separate person who can handle that and who can manage the admin stuff relating to the meeting. Okay. So that's something that's you're able to do with this. Then these are some things that are there when it comes to setting up and joining a meeting. So if you want to set up a meeting, broadly, there are 2 options that you have. Either you can start an instant meeting, which is what you have with this one over here, the new meeting option over here. So then it directly starts a meeting. And then what you can do is you can then invite participants. So in the option, I think right here, next to manage participants, if you click on the invite button, you will have some options for how you can invite people. So mainly there are 2 ways. I think the easier way is you can share the URL. So there'll be an option when you click on this, you can say copy the URL, and then you can just share it to people. You can add it to an email or email invite, or share it on WhatsApp, and that's the easier way to do it. If not, you can also send like a personalized email to everyone. So there would be an option, if you, depending on how your account is set up, you can send an email by Gmail or Yahoo, depending on your email server, to the individual participants that you want. So those are the 2 ways you can invite if you start an instant meeting. The other option is you can schedule the meeting. So like in this case, you can schedule the meetings in advance. So, anytime in advance, you can just schedule that meeting. So what will happen is when you click on this button, you will get an you'll get an interface like this, this here on the right hand side. So then what you can do is you can set the things up to, what are the different settings you want with the videos, etc. And once you put in all the details, when the meeting is happening, everything, then it will generate that the link for the meeting. So then that code you can then share it with the link. You can then share it with your particular participants. You can send them an email in advance, so you don't need to wait for the day to set up those meetings. So then so you can send those in advance. Then if you're the host, what will happen is on the day of the meeting, so for example, for today's session, I've set it so that the time is from 9:30 to 10:30, that it's a maximum 1 hour meeting. And so what will happen is when you log into Zoom, when you go to the platform, 15 minutes before the allocated time, it'll show up in like the calendar, and you just need to press the start button. There'll be an option. You just say start, and then the meeting starts with that link. Okay, so that's what you can do. So I think most probably this is the format you can follow with this. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's what we have. So now next what we can do is yeah, so I think that's about it in terms of the main features of Zoom I wanted to highlight. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Yeah, so if there's no questions, what I'll do is just to give you some tips in terms of how to conduct this effect, or things that might be useful in these kind of situations for uh, making sure that you're doing it effectively. So before the presentation starts, I think these are a few things, some prerequisites. So one is basically make sure you check your microphone and the video settings. So ideally, if you're the presenter, it's best for you to have both the mic and the video on. So then participants can see what's going on. But but if you're having internet issues, then of course, just them being able to hear you clearly, I think that would be enough. But wherever possible, try to have the video as well. So I think another useful thing to do is, so at the moment, the presentation you're seeing is from my laptop, while the video you're seeing of me is from the phone. So this is something I think useful to do. So for example, if there's a connection problem with the phone, with the video, and that goes off, at least still the participants would be able to hear and see the presentation. So the microphone is connected to the laptop, while the video is coming from the phone. So I feel that's like a useful option to have if you're having this kind of internet connectivity issues. I think that would be a best option to do, if possible. Another thing is, of course, as I said, you need to be extra prepared when you're doing an online webinar versus an in-person one. So make sure all of your slides, all the material you have is ready and loaded up. You should not have that delay between people, because if people feel there's like a large gap, people can easily turn off. Okay. So that's something to be mindful of. So if you have like several presentations you want to go through or something, make sure they're all loaded up. Or if several people are presenting, make sure they are ready and prepared with what they're doing. So that's that. Also, what's useful is to have a sort of like a welcome screen. So you would have seen at the start of this, I had a welcome screen. Just quickly show you that. This one. So this is quite useful. So when someone logs in, when they start the call, then they see something and they know what they have to do, and they have an idea what is going on. That okay? So clearly what you can do is say what the session name is, you can say what's the start time, and then maybe give some general guidance to the audience so they know some of the things they can do. So having this welcome screen is useful than just keeping it blank, where people might, log into the meeting, but they're not really, they don't really know what's going on. So it's best to like have like a welcome screen. So then people have an idea that, okay, they know what to expect. So that's a useful thing to have. The other thing, of course, is very important here is to be on time. So unlike a in-person one, if you're not on time, if the presenter is not on time, then you pretty much lost the audience at that point. So that's pretty much that. During the presentation, these are a few things. So you can screen share as required. So if it's more like a discussion type of event, then it's not really that required. You can just have the panelists or the people who are speaking have their videos on and they can speak. But if you're having a presentation, then make sure to use the screen sharing properly and use those annotations. Then people know that what you're doing, and same as within a live presentation. If you were doing this in person, where you'd be pointing to diagrams and doing things like that, do the same thing here as well using the annotation. And also always make sure to pause for the audience questions and have a slide for this Q&A. So sometimes what can happen is that it might be less interactive than an in-person presentation. So always make sure to try to build in to your presentation some points where you pause and allow the audience to also interact with it. But of course, you have to strike a balance. You don't want to have too many long pauses after everything, because if not, that might turn people off. Okay, so you need to strike a balance. So you can have maybe a dedicated Q&A section at the end, or at certain points you can ask people to invite people to jump in and just give their comments and feedback. And really at the end, this is what you can do next is you can then share some of the handouts. So you can use maybe the chat feature or get some feedback. So what we did even with the last two webinars that we did was that at the end of the presentation, we basically had a feedback form that had been prepared, and we basically just shared it on the chat and asked people to share that, to fill in the feedback right there itself. So I feel that's like a good option to do that, where since people are already engaged with this, you can immediately get their feedback from it. So very useful to do that and to share the handouts and things like that. Okay. And also, I think also kind of useful that, in the same way that there would be some casual, discussions going on afterwards, make sure to wait for, people to like give their comments, give their feedback, to say their goodbyes and things like that. Don't like abruptly end the meeting. That can be a bit, uh, you know, best not to do that. Okay, so those are just some quick tips in terms of what you can do with the presentation. Yeah, does anyone else have any other comments regarding that? Things that you've done that you found useful in these kind of situations?
Travis, sorry to interrupt. There is a question on chat.
Okay, let me just check. Okay, how to say, so that's, so there's a question from Samir about how to select the meeting ID. So that is usually automatically generated. So the two options are typically if you're setting a meeting, you would have, so for example, there'll be something like this when you use the schedule meeting option, and on the top, you'll have this generate automatically or this personal meeting ID. So if you put, so I think the default option is generate automatically. So it will basically create a unique meeting ID code. And then essentially the link that is generated from that. So what will happen is at the end, once you entered all the details, it will generate like the form, so like an email text, and it will say with all the details of the meeting, and this is the link. So that is the link that you want to share with the participants. So that is the main way through which you will be we will be getting people to join your meeting. Instead of generating automatically, you can everyone who has a Zoom account also has a personal meeting ID. So this is another way to sort of search for your meeting using it. So if you use the personal meeting ID option, then it's a common address that will be there. But I think usually the generate automatically, I think, is a fairly fine option you can go with. Then also you have this thing called requiring meeting passwords. So now by default, there is no, if you share the link with someone to this meeting, they don't need to, there is no password or anything. So they just have to click on that at that time and they will be taken to the meeting. Okay. So usually there'll be like a waiting room enabled. So until the host allows them in, but apart from that, there's no password or things like that to set. If you're joining by sharing the meeting, the link, but there is another way to join, which is where using this personal basically searching for that meeting, and then someone can join who doesn't have the link. So if someone is joining that way, then you need to have this meeting password. Okay. And I think now I think today I think Zoom had put out an announcement because there was some like security concerns where people were able to join meetings who were not being invited if they know what that meeting ID was. So now I think they have changed the settings so that if someone can no longer join in that way, you need to know what this password is. Okay. But the easiest is just to share the link, because then they just need to click on the link and then they can go to the meeting. Okay. Yeah, hope that answers your question. Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Yeah, if there's no other questions, just a few other useful things to keep in mind. As I was talking earlier, it's best to separate the presenter and the host role. So then it is easier to see so to manage whether if someone is having like a technical difficulty or something, the host can manage that, as well as in terms of the participants, they can check whether is there anyone who's not supposed to be there, etc., and to mute and unmute their mics and things like that. So it's useful to have two separate roles so that the presenter can just concentrate on delivering that presentation. Another useful thing is, as I said, it's important to make sure that you don't have like these big lags between what you're doing. So because of that, it's sometimes useful to remember some of these quick shortcuts that are there. So a lot of them like to mute and unmute your audio, the video, etc., to show or hide the chat panel, or to switch on and off the screen. So these are some of the shortcuts that are useful. Like if you're frequently like switching between presentations and videos and things like that, good to just keep in mind some of these shortcuts, because then you can make the presentation more smoother for the audience. Okay. Another very useful thing to have is to have a second screen. So right now, I'm not really ideally set up here at home. I don't have a second screen. So because of that, I'm just, what I'm seeing on my screen is just the presentation. But if I had a second screen, what can happen is I can have on the second screen, I can have the presentation loaded up. And then, in my main screen, I can have like the chat and things like that showing up. So right now I don't, the chat feature, I'm not seeing it directly unless someone asks me a question. But it's very useful if you have a second screen, because then it makes that management easy as well. So what can have, so particularly useful if you have like multiple slide decks you want to go through. You can have one presentation loaded up and show that to your participants. Because what you can do is with the screen sharing option, if you have a second screen, is you can only share the second screen. So you can be doing something on your main screen where you're like loading up the next presentation, getting that prepared, while the audience will only see what's on your second screen. So having a second screen is quite useful as well to have in these kind of situations. And of course, use a digital microphone. So like what I have over here. So these kind of like so these are kind of like those gaming headsets. These I think can I think makes a big difference than using like a regular microphone, because I think it like cuts out a lot of the background noise that you have. So if there's like a loud fan going on in the background or some background noise, I think this kind of minimizes that a lot. And it's not very expensive as well. For like about 3,000, 5,000, you can get a fairly good headphone. But of course, not these days. It's a bit difficult to get like deliveries. But yeah, that's something you can look at. Another thing is to invest in a graphic tablet. So when it comes to making annotation, so this is only if you're like doing some presentation where it involves a lot of drawing. Say you're doing like something like you're doing like derivatives or something like that. You need to like illustrate a lot of things, draw a lot of graphs and things like that. Then it's useful to use a graphic tablet. So I also have like a small graphic tablet here on the side. So it makes it very easy to like annotate and things like that. So if you don't have one, you can also using like a tablet with a stylus is also a good option for that. You can achieve the same thing. But that's something if you're doing a lot of annotations and things like that. Okay. Finally, in terms of internet connections, I'd say, as I said, there isn't really much you can do to stop it. But these are some of the things you can try to sort of to mitigate the issue. So one is, of course, make sure you don't have any other background programs on the PC. Okay. And, particularly if you're at home and you're sharing the Wi-Fi with others, maybe just tell them that, particularly if you're the presenter and making a presentation, make sure tell them, don't be like streaming stuff or things like that at the same time that you're doing this. So just make sure that, and and if the video is breaking up, if that's failing, then best to just have the audio only. That's useful. And also, as I was saying, having the video on a separate channel like your phone, I think that can also minimize the disruption. So if something happens to your video, at least the audio and the slides, people would still be able to see. Okay, and the others are just general things. So best if possible, if you're the host, to have a separate Wi-Fi network for it, or if you have the Ethernet cable, you can directly connect it to that. So to try to keep the connection as stable as possible. Yeah, so that's really it in terms of the presentation. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything to clarify on? And yeah, and hope you found this useful. And yeah, just please be free to like unmute your mics. And if you have any questions, please be free to ask. Yeah. And also, I think Samika has now put the feedback form as well on the chat. So before you go, please do remember to fill that out. Particularly looking for your input on whether you have used other platforms as well, apart from Zoom, and how do you find the quality of this versus the others. Okay, so right now we are mainly we've been doing our webinars through Zoom, but yeah, we can look at other options as well.
Travis, I'm Roshanara.
Yes, Rosana,
thank
hi.
you very much. Hi, thank you very much for the excellent presentation and very useful information. Um, uh, the, actually, I might have some questions later on because I just need to now use the information you've given and use Zoom. So I'll be in touch if I have any other questions.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Rosana. Yeah,
okay.
I hope you find it as well. I'll also be sharing with everyone. I think in that feedback form at the bottom of it, there are a couple of resources. So I've shared these slides, as well as there's a separate user guide I have prepared, which has more details on the things I went through. It also has at the end like more resources. So if you want, I think Zoom itself has like a series of videos where you can go into detail on some of these points that I discussed. Okay. So yeah, so just make sure you fill out that feedback form, and at the bottom you can access those files, the slides I've shared. Okay. Yeah. So if there's no other questions, then yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, hope to see you again at a future webinar. Yeah.
Travis, I think Udishan has asked another.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, with regard to the security, yeah, I think the main vulnerability they were having was that someone who knows the meeting ID or can figure it out would be able to then just type in that meeting ID and then access the Zoom session. Okay, so I think that happens when so if you look at the options that you have for accessing the meeting, there is this thing called join. In that, I mean, typically the two ways you can join a meeting is either by clicking on the link, or if you know what that meeting ID is. So the problem previously was the case was that if you know what the meeting ID is, anyone can sort of enter the session. Okay. But now I think today they released, I think they put some updates as well. Zoom has been looking at this and putting some updates to deal with this situation. And actually from today, what they have now done is everyone, the participants who join the meeting, by default, they go into a waiting room. So because of that, then you as the host, you'll be able to see who is coming in, who is joining the meeting, and then you can reject someone if it's someone who's not supposed to be in the meeting. So that is one thing they have done. Also, they have now made it mandatory for anyone who is joining with the meeting ID, they also need to enter the password. So that is the password that is shown over here. This thing over here, the require the meeting password. So it's not enough to know the meeting ID. You now need to also have the password to enter that. So that would make it very difficult for someone unauthorized to enter it. I think that was the main vulnerability, and I think Zoom has been doing some action to deal with that. I think, of course, there is anyway like general good sense as well. If someone like, just to use general good judgment, like for example, if there is someone unauthorized who's entered the meeting, maybe they might put something on the chat, link to something which might be like to steal your data, things like that. So, I mean, just using good judgment in those kind of situations, I think is useful. Yeah, to avoid this kind of. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, yeah. So if there's no other questions, then thanks everyone, and please make sure to fill out that form and take the slides, whatever the resources that are there as well. And hope you found this useful. And I think later on, I think this video also should be we've been live streaming it on our YouTube channel, so it'll be available later for viewing as well. And I think we'll share it on our social media channels. Okay, so thanks everyone.
So thanks again, Travis, and bye for now.
Okay, thanks, Rajan. Thanks. Bye.